Hi guys, welcome to the show. I'm Lisa Akbari, your hair doctor, and I feel better. My voice is better. Thank you guys so much, but I wasn't really sick. I had a conference this past weekend, a women's conference, and I talked to hundreds of women. I had a microphone, but it was so loud in there that I just yelled almost. And so that's why I had a little bit of laryngitis. It's practically gone. Okay, couple of things. Number one, I have questions, and I'm going to get right to those in just a minute. But I will be out of my city and state next week. So I am not going to do videos on next week. But I want you to get your questions in. I want to talk about a couple of topics, so I'm going to try to get that done before I get out of here today. And a couple of topics and some things that by popular demand, I'm going to choose them, and some things that you guys have asked about. And so I'm going to talk about that. But let's get right to the questions. But I know I'll miss you guys, and I'll get right back to your questions the next week. So if you got questions in this last few days, I have them in my head, highlighted on my paper. Okay, all right, so let's start with question one. Can you deep condition hair with an instant conditioner? It instructs you to leave it in a few minutes and rinse. If you use a hooded dryer and add oils to the conditioner, such as jojoba, coconut, olive oil, etc., then there was a question mark. All right, well, if it says instant, most likely the molecular weight is going to be a little larger, so it won't penetrate as deeply. Deep penetrating conditioners generally will mean that the molecules are very small and they penetrate deeply. That's what it's supposed to mean. So you do want to look for a conditioner that says deep penetrating. But the great thing about an instant conditioner, because the deep penetrating conditioner, it can be used as an instant as well, because the molecules are small and they go into the hair a lot faster and they do some repair work. But it's always best to sit under a hooded dryer with your conditioners. Raise the temperature, you've heard me talk about this before, to about 60 degrees, which is usually on medium setting, and that's going to give you your optimum penetration. Now, as far as the oils are concerned, there's no need to add oils to your conditioner. You want protein and moisture, and you want that balance, because that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna get strong and hydrated hair. You add your oils as a leave-in afterwards. Jojoba is great. Of course, you know I don't believe in coconut for the hair necessarily, or olive oil, things like that. They can be used there, but the weights are larger. Even though they are great for lubrication, there are oils that are better. Mink. And those of you who are concerned about mink oils for whatever reason, you have your jojoba and some of the others. But I do not recommend you use necessarily the coconut or olive oil. All right, next question. I would like to receive micro braids. Will micro braids cause damage? Well, micro braids can cause damage. You said your hair is soft and thin. Number one, you never wanted to use micro braids on thin hair or fine hair. If it's thin out, then that's a problem. And that's one of the videos I'm definitely going to do on is fine and thin, the difference between those two. Fine is a normal texture. Thin is not. But we'll do that at a later date. Okay, well, micro braids, that's a lot of stress on the hair and on the hair follicle. So you want to be careful if you're going to do those. Make sure that the length is not past your shoulder. And many people get these micro braids and they have all the way down their back. So much weight on the follicle, and it causes so much damage. So you be very careful with that. So I don't recommend micro braids. I recommend that because micro braids, people tend to leave them up for months and months and months. I don't recommend that because the pollutants are collected and you end up with all these scalp itch and all the scalp problems, creating a mansion for pathogens, disease-causing bacteria. So be very, very careful with that as well. Next question. Is there anything in the world of hair care, maintenance, or hair products that is recommended to change when the seasons change? If yes, please elaborate. Thanks. Okay. Now, you have winter, spring, summer, and fall. In my part of the world, we get all the seasons. We get the winter and the spring and the summer and fall. Notice your skin, how it changes when the season changes. In your drier times, if you're in a place where it's dry all the time, then you've got to raise your moisture levels. We have one product called hydration. You just don't need that in the summer if it's very humid in your part of the world. If you have a really dry climate, you always need to step up your hydrations. You always need the protein because the hair is made of protein, but you never need to worry about it as much with the change as you do with the seasons that are really, really dry. When the seasons are humid, then you can change it as well. Mainly the problem when humid seasons, that what we're in right now, and again, it may not be in your part of the world, but the main thing we have to be concerned about is hairstyles. Keeping our cuticle layers flat so that they're compact, and the moisture, the negative moisture, humidity outside won't get into the hair and cause it to frizz. You always want to use products that are a little bit more dense so that they can flatten the cuticle. Your sculpting lotions. With natural hair, you really don't have to worry about it as much as with relaxed hair. With natural hair, if you use a dense moisturizer, then you're usually okay. Even though it's hydration and it's moisture, if it's pretty dense, then you're good. Things like our Moisture Plus, the naturally textured, because they give a lot of definition, those kind of things. Oils. Oils are fabulous for helping with keeping the hair better in the humid seasons. In other words, resisting frizz. But when you have relaxers, you want to use more of your sculpting lotions. Stay away from your spritz, stay away from gels and mousse, but you want to do that. So yes, the hair does change during the seasons, but not as much as most people think. Your challenge seasons are your extreme conditions, like extremely hot or extremely cold. But those most of our spring and falls are really great for the hair. Okay, but the summers are great as far as the way the hair feels, but it wreaks havoc on the hairstyle because you frizz, and so the humid climates. Okay, now next question. What do you recommend for thinning hair in the crown? I have heard of neurodermatitis. What are your thoughts? Usually neurodermatitis is mostly in the nape area, and it's where the cells are inflamed in those areas, mostly over women over 40. We find that they have those problems, but that's usually, we don't find that as much in the crown. Sometimes you'll notice little pimples back there. I just don't, that's something that is an internal follicular problem, but it's aggravated by external issues. And what I mean by that is, again, it's something that you will find with women, sometimes hormone changes, sometimes when women are going through menopause, some cases with where the inflammation is in those nerve endings. It's just a combination of things we're finding with neurodermatitis, but we're not finding, my research doesn't show me in the crown as much. So I'm going to do a little more research for you and try to give you an even better answer on that one. All right, so let's see. What are the benefits of using castor oil on the scalp / hair? If there are any benefits, how should it be applied? I don't recommend castor oil for the scalp and hair. Again, how dense it is the problem for me. I just don't recommend it. And you're going to find that what I do in being so bold and making these statements, I do research. I conduct studies to prove theories that I have. I do certain research, and then I get the raw material and I work with it on the hair. Look at it under the microscope, and that's how I make some of my decisions. So not always. Some things I work with and I've used, and then sometimes things that I read and I look at what it's made of, and I feel it, and I realize this is not going to work. So I find various ways to make these determinations. So when you guys are asking these questions, I know it's out there. There's a wealth of knowledge out there, but then there's also just a lot of stuff out there that is not necessary. So we're going through an expense that we don't have to go through. And there's a lot of technology here that will make us a decent product. And that's one thing, the reason why I would recommend that you just kind of think about that before you start using castor oil, olive oil, coconut oil, all those things. It's just not necessary. Okay. Let's see. It said, how do you feel? How do you treat split ends? I always thought you trim or cut ends in order to treat them. Well, no, that's not treating them. That's killing them. To trim or not to trim, that's the question. I understand. Listen, you have two options in dealing with split ends. You can cut them away or you can treat them. And how do you treat them? On a daily basis, you work with your ends. You make sure you first feel the ends, do the inspection. Once you decide, okay, I'm dry feeling, then you hydrate, and then you go back and you seal using your fingers and thumb or forefinger and thumb, and you seal. If you feel really soft, but you're wanting to treat the ends, then you use the oil. And that will keep you from having to trim them as often. The reason why you trim is for grooming purposes. You don't have to trim to grow hair. You're growing from the scalp and you're not growing from the ends. But to prevent the hair from peeling back into the other hairs, into the healthier part of the shaft, then you do want to treat them. And you treat them on a daily basis by smoothing those ends, lubricating the shaft, first hydrating, then lubricating to seal. And under your dry with your conditioner, of course, we're using our protein for strength and moisture for hydration. If you notice, a lot of the answers are very much the same. We're just going back to the basics, and there's some simple ways to take care of our hair. Next question, how do you prevent gray hair? Well, let's talk about what it is in the first place. First, gray is an illusion. It's the black and the white hair, or the brown and the white, light color hair, and it looks like it's gray. Or sometimes it's in that transition where you're losing your color pigments and then it's gray. Well, I don't have an answer for preventing gray hair. It's an absence of color pigments found in the cortical fibers, or lack of. So the best way to get rid of your gray is to cover it. And the way you cover it, the safest way to just cover the gray. And you've noticed I put some color on my hair, speaking of covering gray, because I have some gray on my sides. I love my hair. I didn't want my little white friends in the front of my head. Sorry. I love it, but I did want them there. So I decided to cover them up. And what I used was a deposit. And it's a little bit darker. You'll go back and look at some of the other videos. It's just a semi-permanent deposit. And one of the ones that I do recommend, and I will tell you this because I don't want you guys guessing, it's Compliments by Clairol. And that's one of the things that I'm going to say today. And I don't recommend a lot of products, but I feel like it's safe. And I feel like it's you can get this and not have a problem. Cover it. Semi-permanent deposit. Stay away from the semi-permanent stains, and you will be okay because the stains will dehydrate. Now, the hennas, the Beijing, the plant products are excellent. You just got to make sure that you raise your moisture levels up because you want to hydrate before you put that color on. Shampoo, condition, hydrate, protein and moisture. Then you want to do the same after, and you have to daily moisturize. I mean, you have to do that anyway, but you really have to focus because you will dehydrate with those plant products. Okay, now next question. I'm seeing more long strands and look like shed hair without the bulbs. What might be causing this to happen? Well, long strands that look like you think it may be hair that's shedding, but it doesn't have a bulb, will mean, number one, that it's not shedding. Because if it's shedding, it's got a bulb on the end. So you're probably doing what I call layer peeling. That means down the length of the strand, you're losing pieces. And that's something that happens for several reasons. It happens when you don't condition well. It means you're not balanced. It can happen with chemicals, surfaces. It can happen with heated tools, because whatever pressures that cuticle, then it causes the cuticle to lift, or whatever disturbs it, or exposure to the cuticle, like dehydration, heavy brushing. It can be a number of things that can cause it to lift. Once it's lifted, when you start manipulating your hair, then you can find that hair will begin to, the layers will begin to separate and peel. And that's when you'll notice these long, usually they're thinner than your natural texture, and that's the problem. Okay, my son is trying to grow his hair. He is wearing an afro and doesn't like to get it shaped. His hair is breaking off. Would regular shaping help it to grow? or he's using a pick to comb his hair. Okay, two things. Number one, it's a contradiction to think that cutting helps your hair to grow, because the hair grows from the scalp. If you cut it away, you're only removing length. So we know cutting doesn't help. We've got to keep that in mind, guys. You cannot cut your hair into length. All right, you can treat it into it, but you can't cut it into length, and you can't even treat it into growth, because the hair is going to grow from the follicle. As long as that follicle is functioning, your hair is going to grow. Okay, now the other thing is with the fro, it's okay if he does not want to shape it, but he does need to plait it. He's got to dress it for bed. A lot of times this new generation of folks wearing fros back in the 70s, now I'm telling my age, that's okay. The new generation, they don't want to plait their fros. The generation like with myself, we did the curly fros. That's why when I did the video on the curly fro, you guys remember that? Everybody went crazy like, oh, this is great, this is great. It's been around forever, back in the 70s. Well, that's what he's going to need to do. Plait his hair in a leave-in conditioner and a moisturizer, and he'll be fine. Now, the other thing is picking the hair. When you take a pick and pick the hair, and let's get the camera up just a little bit so you guys can see. Okay, when I take and pick, what happens, we pull and we cause, you'll notice it'll pop. What you're doing is creating little tears. So whenever you create the tears in the hair, and we talked about this, when you create tears, then what are you going to have? You're going to cause elasticity problems. When the elasticity problems occur, then you're probably going to lose your layers and you're going to break. You're going to break definitely at some point. So that's what's happening. We've got a deep condition, and I have a natural hair program that is fabulous. He can use that and he'll do well. Or he can just, you can put together his program. He needs a clarifier, a protein and moisture conditioner, a leave-in conditioner, and a leave-in moisturizer. Okay? All right, so next question. What do you recommend for thin hairline? Okay. There are two categories of hair loss, and we've talked about this. We have internal and external follicular problems. We have to check to see if the internal portion of the follicle is malfunctioning, and that can only be seen through a microscopic examination by a trichologist. Now, that's the first step with that internal. Then at that point, those hairs will show up with certain characteristics that say, okay, I'm malfunctioning. The second thing that we want to look at is whether or not we've got any little pimples in that area, redness, irritation, flakes, things like that. Then that will tell us that there's probably some external problems. If you don't have those telltale signs, then we do have to look at our chemicals to see if we're burning the hair away, because the process of the relaxer is to soften, straighten, thin, dissolve. Sometimes there's too much pressure on that hairline, and you're pulling and you're causing that hair to burn away. And then you have times when with natural hair, where people are twisting and braiding, and they're causing density changes. So we have to look at all those areas to determine whether or not there's a problem with something we're doing externally or internally. Examination will tell you for sure. Anytime there's alopecia, there are things we can try long distance, and we can talk about it. I can make some recommendations, but if the problem persists, you need to have a microscopic and physical examination. Next question. Do I need to use a rinse out conditioner after I deep condition my hair? I have a conditioner that rinses out, but the bottle says it can be used as a leave-in. I know that the function of a rinse-out conditioner is to close the cuticle, so I am wondering if the rinse-out leave-in all-in-one is getting both jobs done. Okay, as I said earlier, a leave-in conditioner generally will have a larger, an instant conditioner generally will have a larger weight to it. Rests solely on top of the cuticle. This is what the instants do, because they want to give you the instant results, and they just want to sit on, and then they dissipate over a period of time. And that's not a bad thing, but the deep conditioning does more repair work, because it will draw the cuticle in tighter against the cortex, and your cuticle layers become more compact, increasing elasticity, increasing shine. So I don't recommend You can use some deep penetrating as an instant conditioner. And I think that what she said was rinse out, leave in. I'm sorry, dear. Rinse out. If you're going to rinse it out, or leave in. Now, I'm going to tell you, if it's a deep penetrating conditioner, you do not want to leave it in, because the deep penetrating conditioners are meant to repair and rinse out. Because what will happen, more of your environmental pollutants will stick to that conditioner. So then you'll find yourself with dull hair after a few days. So to answer that question, I gave you some other answers that you didn't ask for, but to answer that question, you don't want to use a rinse out conditioner as a leave-in conditioner. My opinion, send me the name of it or send me some of that product. I will be glad to study it and tell you what I think once I've used it. Okay, last question. Can you explain the paraben used in your hair vitamins? Is it a food grade or a bad paraben? I am confused about parabens. Thanks. Right. My chemist and I have conversations about parabens all the time. I've conducted studies on parabens, the surfactants, all of these ingredients, and I'm not finding problems with them under the microscope. Matter of fact, I'm finding great things with them. But what I have done is I've taken all the parabens. Years ago, I put parabens in my product, but all of those are taken out of my products. I don't have parabens in my leave-in conditioners anymore. So if you have something, you must have an old label. So in the last year, there may have been some labels that have that. But we've since switched all of that out, and you shouldn't see that. So parabens in itself, I don't think are bad products, ingredients, but there are a lot of people, let me just tell you about the surfactants and the parabens and all of these ingredients that everybody's so afraid of. There are studies that say that they cause all kinds of problems, can cause even cancer. And there are studies that show there's nothing there that proves that. Now these studies, what my chemist and I have decided, that the people that are saying these things about these parabens and all of these ingredients that they've got everyone so afraid of, we've decided that this is just something that is an opinion based on the research we've done. And once I can find something really solid, if you have something and you found a research from a reputable group body, then I'll be more than happy to take a look at it. Okay? Thanks a lot, guys. I'm Lisa Akbari, your hair doctor. Remember, I won't be here next week, but I love you guys. Send those questions in. I'm going to get those questions answered for you as soon as I can. And I'm going to try to do a couple of other videos as well. I may surprise you. Thanks again. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.